Cold Case, an Angelica Dale Mystery by P.K. Armstrong. Chapter 8. After a lively breakfast of pancakes and sausage with the Roland family, I helped Sandy clear the kitchen, grabbed my bag, and left soon after to make my appointment with the Osgood City archivist. The weather had turned unexpectedly cool, with rain moving in during the small hours of the morning. It had rained enough for the tires to splash in the small puddles dotting the road. I rolled my window down to smell the wet earth, leaves, and grass. This overcast, wet day was the perfect type of day to visit an archive. The police archivist worked out of the Osgood Museum of History, located on the north edge of town. It was still early, so I pulled into a mostly empty parking lot, except for the employee section. It was still sprinkling, so I did a fast walk to the door instead of opening my umbrella. I was pleasantly surprised that a few feet from the double glass doors, a security guard unlocked the doors and invited me inside. "Miss Dale?" I nodded, wiped my boots, and walked forward, my face directed to my feet, making sure I wasn't tracking on the pristine floors. The sight as I crossed the foyer into the main building when I finally looked up took my breath away. The ceiling and one-third of the walls were glass. The rain created a rippling effect that traced down until it seemed to disappear behind the maple paneling that descended to the floor. Each panel was carved with pivotal scenes from Osgood's history. There were scenes of indigenous peoples on the hunt, a massive flood that razed the area hundreds of years ago, statehood, and a compilation of major industries that grew from the area. Each carving had a small card describing why the scene was important to Osgood's roots. I looked beyond the doorway and spied a beautiful marble staircase leading to unknown pleasures of the museum, but today was not my day for exploring. As if to emphasize this point, I heard my name and turned in the opposite direction of the staircase to see a skinny, nondescript man walking towards me hurriedly as if he were late for something important. "Miss Dale?" he repeated. "Yes, Mr. Winters?" The harassed man stuck out his hand and shook mine with such vigor I thought my hand would fall off. I gently took my hand back. "Thank you for meeting me. I hope I am not taking you away from your work." "No, no. Assisting the courts, law enforcement, political figures, students, and even private citizens with research is part of my job. I'm excited to help you, specifically because I have a surprise for you that I think you will like." Mr. Winters was rubbing his hands together in earnest. "A surprise?" I was a little taken aback. Mr. Winters smiled and gestured for me to follow him. He led me towards the marble staircase, but instead of going up, we descended the stairs and exited in the basement. The landing was dark on this level because of a lack of natural light, so I paused to let my eyes adjust and waited as Mr. Winters opened another set of double doors. My mouth dropped open again as before me in poster-sized pictures the Aspen Club, as it was before and after the fire of 1985, was on display before my eyes. I looked at Mr. Winters, my unspoken question on my face. Mr. Winters was grinning from ear to ear. "I thought you would be pleased. We are curating an exhibit covering the fire that destroyed the Aspen Club and took the lives of 4 people. He paused as I began looking at the preliminary sketches and photos. The first of the sketches was an overview of the building. It was set several yards back from a main road that was under construction, a widening project in anticipation of increased traffic in the area. The building the Aspen Club occupied was set back on the plot with the parking lot in the front. As you moved to the next spot in the exhibit, there was a drawing of the inside of the bar. Mr. Winters pointed to the drawing. "Eventually, this will be a 3D model of the bar." He looked at me pointedly. "Do you think it's morbid?" "Truthfully, at first glance, yes," I said honestly. Mr. Winters nodded, understanding. "Some on the museum board and at City Hall thought so as well. But Moira Adams, the idea's originator, is the niece of one of the victims. She explained that the fire at the Aspen Club and the subsequent trial changed her family's lives and that of the community forever. She thought it should be a memorial. We began collecting personal stories and photos to include in the exhibit. We are thinking of calling it Out of the Ashes or something like that. I nodded. It should be spectacular. We think so. He walked over to a table and picked up a small box and handed it to me. This box is a copy of everything we have: photos, newspaper reports, and video footage. Thank you. This will help. Mr. Winters paused and cleared his throat. I was assured that you were obsessive when it came to the truth, and you would be fair. It was as close to confrontation that Mr. Winters would get. I've been hired by someone who thinks Stormie Gyles is innocent, yes, but my investigation may turn up lots of information. I will not withhold the truth, even if it paints my client in a bad light. I looked down and pulled out the photos of the 4 dead people. People lost their lives, Mr. Winters. Until the guilty are brought to justice, the living owe the dead the truth. Mr. Winters stared at me and then decided. He nodded and handed me his card. If you need anything else, please don't hesitate to ask. Actually, Mr. Winters, there is one more thing. You said you were interested in personal stories of those affected by the fire. Could I get a copy of the list you are working from? It would help me identify people that are willing to talk. Sure. He walked away briefly and returned with a spreadsheet. There's a column where they were asked briefly to describe their link to the crime or victims. I hope it helps. I nodded my head. Oh yes, this definitely helps.